Good morning. My name is Claudia Marshall. My pronouns are she and her, and I would like to welcome you to the weekly service of the Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church, or as we affectionately call it, BBUUC. We are holding our service via our YouTube channel. We are holding this sacred space until we can safely open the building. Meanwhile, we are continuing to meet in online fellowship meetings. Please check your calendar at bbuuc.org to find out about the different activities for families and other meetings. Unitarian Universalism is an evolving faith based on 7 principles. UUs live by the assertion, deeds, not creeds. If you want to find out more about Unitarian Universalism, please visit www.uua.org. Our chalice lighting comes from Spilling the Light Meditations on Hope and Resilience. In this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that will not mean that we are lost in the wilderness. We rely on certainty beneath the foundation of our values and ethics. We are the people who return to love like a North Star and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to the world of which we dream, and by covenant and the movement forward of one right action and the next, we know that one day we will arrive home. We hold hope close. Our service today is about our stories. September 15th through October 15th is Hispanic Heritage Month, where we honor the contributions of our Hispanic and Latino brothers and sisters. And we acknowledge this time by having our brother Manny Andrade read a poem called Como Tu.
Como Tu, Like You, Like Me, by Richard Blanco, for the DACA dreamers and for all our nation's immigrants. My veins don't end in me, but in the unanimous blood of those who struggle for life. Mis venas no terminan en mí, sino en la sangre unánime de los que luchan por la vida. Roque Dalton, como tú. Como tú, I question history's blur in my eyes each time I face a mirror. Like a mirror, I gaze into my palm, a wrinkled map I still can't read, my lifeline, an unnamed road I can't find, can't trace back to the fork in my parents' trek that cradled me here. Como tú, I woke up to this dream of a country I didn't choose, that didn't choose me, trapped in the nightmare of its hateful glares. Como tú, I'm also from the lakes and farms, waterfalls and prairies of another country I can't fully claim either. Como tú, I'm either a mirage living among those faces and streets that raised me here, or I'm nothing, a memory forgotten by all I was taken from and can't return to again. Like memory, at times I wish I could erase the music of my name in Spanish, and at times I cherish it and despise my other syllables clashing in English. Como tú, I want to speak of myself in 2 languages at once, and despite my tongue's words defined me. Like words, I read footprints like my past, erased by waves of circumstance, my future uncertain as wind. Like the wind, como tú, I carry songs, howls, whispers, thunders, growl. Like thunder, I'm a foreign-born cloud that's drifted here. I'm lightning and the balm of rain. Como tú, our blood rains for the dirty thirst of this land. Like thirst, like hunger, we ache with the need to save ourselves and our country from itself.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage.
This is a time period when we hold sacred space for our joys and our concerns. We light a flame of sorrow for Ken and Karen Christensen at the loss of their son, John Christensen, who passed away on September 11th after a 28-month battle with stage 4 colon cancer. Ken and Karen had traveled to Ohio earlier this month to be with him and were at his side along with his wife and daughter when he passed away at the age of 50 under hospice care. Our thoughts are with Ken and Karen and their family during this time of grief and loss. We will keep them in our prayers and in our hearts. We light another flame of sorrow at the loss of member Deborah McGovern, who passed away on Sunday the 19th. Deborah had been moved to her daughter's home in Gainesville in May, and her son-in-law had left his job to take full-time care of her. Deborah will be united with her mother in North Carolina. Our memorial service will be held at BBUUC, and information about the arrangements will be forthcoming. We want to light a candle of joy to welcome back Eli G. You may remember him as Elizabeth. BBUUC is happy to embrace Eli as part of our community after a very tough time. He had lost his husband, Felix, after a long illness and has suffered 2 strokes. If you would like his address or number, it is on Breeze, or contact Cindy J. of the Caring Chair. Finally, we light a candle to acknowledge all the joys and concerns that have not been spoken. May you find joy and peace and happiness as the days come when we will be able to share our lives with each other.
Good morning, friends. My name is David. My pronouns are he and him. And our good friend Chris has asked me to share a story with you this morning. And she has given me this basket. It's a spirit play basket. I wonder what this basket holds. Let's see. Gosh, I wonder what this could be. Is this story a green promise? The promise that says we promise to grow in mind and spirit, to grow together, and to grow a little each day. The grown-ups know this as the 4th UU principle, a free and responsible search for what is true. Now let's see what else is in the spirit basket here. Okay. Have you ever wondered how our church, Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church, came to be? That's the story we're going to tell today. And the story was given to us by our friend Debbie Atkins. And it goes like this. For many years, there was only one Unitarian Universalist church in Jacksonville, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Jacksonville in the neighborhood of Arlington. That church grew and grew. They recognized that there were enough people to start another church. They also recognized that there were many people moving to Mandarin and Orange Park who could become new members. Meetings for the new groups started and were held on Sunday evenings, alternating between Orange Park and Mandarin, the 2 sides of the Buckman Bridge. On May 5th, 1990, the first religious service of the Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Society was held in Orange Park. 22 people became charter members. As expected, the society grew, and by late summer of 1990, both adults and kids had outgrown this meeting place. We needed to find a bigger home. After a long search, we found a new home at the Mandarin Community Club. We met at the community club for 20 years. Services were held upstairs in the main hall, and RE was in the basement. Do you know why we don't have basements here in Florida? It's because when it rains, they flood. And in summer, if we had a week of strong afternoon thunderstorms, water would seep into that basement and we couldn't have RE that Sunday. The church members for years wanted our own home, a place that didn't flood and where we could use it other than Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings. For 10 long years, we worked hard to raise money to build our church home. And in 2010, we had finally raised enough money to build our church. During the building process, we went through another transition and decided to change our name from Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Society to the Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church, or BBUUC. After about 10 months of construction, the building was completed, and on Sunday, February 6, 2011, BBUUC held its first service in its new sanctuary. I wonder, what stories will we tell about our church in the future? And with this, our story is told. Until the next time.
We come to this place because we love what exists here. This church is a living entity, and like all living things, it must have nurture and sustenance. Its breath and its heartbeat, its life itself, can only be derived from its living components, us. We invite you to make an offering to support our mission of our church by using the PayPal Giving Fund link on our YouTube page or through the Donate tab on our church website. Your offering will be given and received in the spirit of grateful fellowship. I'm so happy to be able to introduce our minister today. Reverend Tracy Barrett lives in Winter Springs, Florida, and considers herself to be a UU evangelist, sharing the good news about our liberal faith. She serves as the halftime consulting minister at University Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Church in Orlando, Florida. Reverend Tracy creates workshop experiences for congregations and individuals. She is also pursuing a Doctor of Ministry at the United Theological School with a focus on revitalizing congregations. Welcome, Tracy.
When our children tell our story, they'll tell the story of tonight. If you've watched Hamilton or heard the soundtrack, this is a line from one of the early songs in the show. It's just after Hamilton meets Lafayette, Mulligan, and Lawrence, and they begin to talk seriously of revolution. Now, I love this show. Years before I got to see it on Disney Plus, I listened to the soundtrack over and over. For me, the entire show is about the legacy we leave. Now, I know some of you are thinking, now, Reverend Tracy, it is about the American Revolution and Alexander Hamilton. And sure, that too. But the whole story underneath that is about the importance of legacy. Who is left to tell our stories and how those stories can change? The title of today's sermon is from Hamilton as well. There's a line that says, "You have no control, who lives, who dies, and who tells your story." Legacy. Who tells our stories and how do we hear them? Are the stories we're living ones we've been told or ones we actually witnessed and remember? There's a saying of history is written by the victors. And we're learning that as we do our anti-racism and anti-oppression work and start listening to Black, Indigenous, and people of color tell us their stories and their histories. It's sobering work to see how in most cases it is widely different than the tales we heard in school. Now I'd like you to humor me for a moment. Think about a funny story you'd tell me about your past if we were sitting and having a cup of coffee. A story that helps me get to know you. Now I want you to pause and hold that memory. Is it your memory or is it a story you were told? What do I mean? Well, let me illustrate with one of my favorite stories about me and my dad. He was taking an at-home electronics course when I was a kid, and I would help him by identifying the colors on those tiny little resistors that he would then solder onto the board. Well, one night while we were working, he realized we'd need to go back to Radio Shack to buy more of a certain resistor. And that may help you. Some of you date this story. It was the weekend or something, so we wouldn't be able to go shopping for a day or two. Now, the next day, while my dad was at work, I went into the garage and found an old TV. I used my handy dandy toolbox my dad gave me at 5 years old to pop that back off, pull out an electric board, find the resistors my dad needed, and pop them off with a flathead screwdriver and a pair of snips. I proudly went to him that night and showed him that I had solved the problem. And he started to get upset, but my mom simply said, "You created this monster. You can't get mad at her." Sweet story, right? I love it. I just don't remember it. I remember working with my dad on the resistors and his work, and I have no doubt that I would have done that. I was taking my bedroom furniture apart at 5 because my dad did give me my own real toolbox. But I don't remember if I tore apart the broken TV. It could be true. Now, that's an innocuous story, one that lines up with who I was as a child, curious and persistent, and who I am now, still persistent and still curious. But what if it wasn't? I can think of about 20 stories I've been told about my childhood, and by extension, myself, that I don't remember and aren't quite as funny and sweet. They're ones that fit a narrative that others wish to tell me about me, and perhaps you can as well. You can't control who tells your story. I'm going to bring us out of the individual aspect of this. And while, yes, it's important and says a lot about each of us, we are also a part of a collective. Together, each of you with your own stories come together to create this community with its own collective story. And these stories get intertwined and added to and form the legacy of this community. So what's the story of this congregation? Not just your founding, although that's important. You see, the way congregations come together in their early days lays down the DNA of the congregation. There are endless reports out there about how a congregation will do certain things or not do certain things, and no one really knows why. I'm going to find out through digging that these things were done or not done early in the founding. Never mind that no one who founded the congregation was even alive anymore. No one knew the story, but it still lived on. Or there are other cases. I remember my first time in a Unitarian Universalist congregation. Seriously, it was my first visit. And I was chatting with people after the service, and someone told me this story about how the church nearly split over a previous minister. I was shocked, and I asked, well, when did this happen? Folks, it had been 5 years. 5 years since that happened. And this person told me the story like it happened yesterday. Never mind that it was being told to a visitor on her first time there. This story was so embedded in who they were, they couldn't help themselves from repeating it to everyone and reliving it. It affected everything. 3 years later, when I left to go to seminary, it was still affecting things. It was a deep grief that had never really been dealt with, and because of that, it hung around like a pallor in the place. I've seen it play out in other congregations that started from a split, regardless of whether it was healthy or not, congregations that had misconduct, whether from ministers, staff, or members, congregations that had a devastating loss of people or their building due to disaster, or of congregations that can't understand why they're not attracting and keeping new members. And chances are there's a story about who is actually welcome. These stories get embedded into our culture as a congregation, and it colors everything we do, every decision we make. You might have heard the symptoms of it. Oh, we tried that before and it didn't work. Or we just don't talk about things like that. Or we don't seem to be the place for that demographic of members. Who tells your story? Keep in mind, too, your stories don't just stay with you. They're told about you to others. Much like our stories of our childhood, other people will tell these stories about you. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not, but you can't control who tells your story. Are the stories about your congregation ones that you collectively here now lived through and actually remember, or are they ones passed down by others? Have they, much like the story with my dad, been told to you so many times that you assume they're true? Well, let's say that they are. Let's say that the stories that you tell yourselves about yourself are true and remembered correctly. Are these stories helping you move forward to the future you want now? Or are they holding you back and keeping you in a framework that your congregational ancestors wanted? If they're helping you move forward, great. Share those stories with each other. Keep them going. Let those foundations grow stronger. Write them down. Share them with new members. Share them with old members. Celebrate them and add to them as you make new stories. If they're holding you back, then it's time to begin telling new stories. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's time to lie or embellish. You can't change what has already happened. but you can move forward. You start by being honest with yourselves collectively as a congregation. And this isn't just a job for leadership, it's a job for everyone. It means looking at the places in your history, however far back, noting where mistakes were made, where people were hurt, and figure out if there is anything that can be fixed. Possibly not, especially if it was a long while back. But sometimes it begins by simply saying, our congregational ancestors made mistakes here, and we recognize that has affected who we have been and who we are today, and we're committed to making things better. Then, of course, you do have to follow through and correct the things that may be ingrained deep without you realizing it. You may have to apologize to people who have been hurt by your congregation. You may have to apologize in general without being able to people because those people are gone. You may have to offer and or accept forgiveness. This work is hard and it's holy. It's no different than the work we are being called to do in anti-racism and anti-oppression, to recognize choices that were made in our collective past, state them, and work towards change, even if, especially if we did not cause that pain. It's as simple and as hard as saying, even though my ancestors weren't here in America when these horrible things happened, I have benefited from them. I'm sorry. I'm working to make changes in what I do to affect real change. Can't change what we don't recognize. And much like how congregational DNA runs so deep that no one who is currently in a congregation may know what happened, but they feel the effects, changes you make starting today can affect the DNA of your congregation for years to come. You may never know what this congregation will be in 10, 20, 50 years from now. That's the beauty and the heartbreak of our stories. We don't control who tells the story or how they tell it. All we can hope to do is lay a foundation that gives us a good legacy. So going back to Hamilton for a moment, in the final number of the musical, as they're wrapping up all the storylines and sharing both Alexander and Eliza Hamilton's stories, George Washington sings this line: "What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you'll never see." I encourage you to do some gardening, friends. It means continuing to tend to the seeds and plants that are growing strong and healthy. It means digging up the ones that are choking the life out of the garden. It means planting new seeds by telling new stories about who you are meant to be, not just who you are. You may not be able to control who tells your story, but you can help them by laying a framework for good stories about you. What will your children say about your story? What will they say about how you live your Unitarian Universalist values? When they tell the story of this time, what will they say about your congregation and how it lived within the community? I don't know the answers to that. The answers are up to you. I encourage you to let this be one of the sermons y'all chew on for a while. If there's work to do, get curious and dig in. What stories have you been telling yourselves about yourselves? Regardless of what kinds of stories they are, you can work right now in creating new stories to share and tell and plant those seeds for your legacy. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so.
At the start of any given day, there is mystery available. There is a game waiting for an open heart to say yes. Here I am, I'll play. And if we're smart, we'll listen to the way, and all the misery that held us down, we'll let it fade. Let it be outshined by a simple spark of a life that's waiting to be made. It's waiting to be made. What will you make of this day? What will you keep? What will you change? What will you see? What will you believe? What will you make of your dreams? Will you keep sleeping, or will you awaken and decide what you will make? At the start of any given day, there is history and poetry. There is a play, but you're not in the audience. You are the star. So get out there and say what you will make. What will you make of this day? What will you keep? What will you change? What will you see? What will you believe? What will you make of your dreams? Will you keep sleeping, or will you awaken and decide just what you will make of this day? What will you keep? What will you change? What will you see? And what will you believe? What will you make of your dreams? Will you keep sleeping, or will you awaken and decide what you will make?
I truly hope you have enjoyed our services today. I always just feel so blessed and just so full to experience them. And our words today come from Margaret Williams Braxton. Once upon a time, I was. Now I am. Someday I will become. Once there was. Now there is. Soon there will be, and someday there surely shall be. Once upon a time we were, now we are, and someday, hallelujah, we shall surely become. Amen. Namaste. Blessed be.